Lily Brooks had always considered herself an ordinary waitress. She worked at the Diner Co., a bustling, no-frills eatery in the heart of the city. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills, and she was good at it. Lily was the kind of person who took pride in her work, even when it wasn't recognized. The customers didn't always notice the effort she put into every dish, the warmth she injected into every greeting, or the way she made sure every table felt attended to. But that didn't matter to her. She did it because she genuinely cared. Unfortunately, Lily's dedication to her job went unnoticed by most of her colleagues, and, even more so, by her manager, George. In the eyes of her co-workers, she was just another waitress, someone easily overlooked. The daily grind at the Diner Co. was never kind to anyone, especially to those who weren't part of the in crowd. It was a place where favoritism ruled, where a smile could get you ahead and a frown could push you back. Lily wasn't part of the circle that got special treatment, nor did she seek it. She was simply there to do her job the best she could, no matter what. However, despite her best efforts, the toxic work culture at the Diner Co. was impossible to ignore. It felt like every day there was a new drama, a new gossip, or another round of dismissals that no one had seen coming. The staff, especially her co-workers like Kate and Brian, spent more time chatting and slacking off than doing the work that needed to be done. Lily's efforts were constantly overshadowed by those who were more interested in making fun of customers, taking longer breaks, or gossiping behind the counter. But Lily stayed focused. She would serve her tables with a smile, no matter how little respect she received in return. At the same time, she knew that her position at the Diner Co. wasn't safe. Every day felt like walking a tightrope. Any mistake, no matter how small, could be the reason she would be sent packing, and everyone knew it. But, despite the ever-present undercurrent of tension and judgment, Lily's compassion for her customers never wavered. She remained kind and considerate, even when she was ignored by her own co-workers. Yet deep down, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that this place wasn't just about bad management or difficult customers. The culture at the Diner Co. was deeply flawed. It was a toxic environment that bred resentment, favoritism, and bitterness. It was clear to her that the Diner Co. wasn't just failing to appreciate its workers. It was actively encouraging a negative atmosphere, where people felt like they had to fight for every scrap of attention, every ounce of respect. Lily knew that as long as she stayed in this place, she would remain invisible, just a waitress, ignored and overlooked, but that was something she couldn't accept forever. David Mitchell walked into the Diner Co. on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, his worn shoes tapping lightly on the tiled floor as he pushed open the door. The air inside was a familiar mix of sizzling food, clinking dishes, and the faint hum of conversations. The restaurant was buzzing with activity, but it wasn't the usual hustle of a busy lunchtime rush. It was a quiet, almost muted chaos. A few customers were seated in booths, their orders being ignored or left incomplete, while the staff behind the counter were preoccupied with everything but their actual duties. David stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the atmosphere. He wasn't one for being noticed, but he had hoped, perhaps naively, that a simple hello or acknowledgement would greet him at a place like the Diner Co. Instead, he was met with silence. Kate, the usual server at the front, had her back turned, chatting idly with Brian, both of them more interested in their own conversation than the people they were supposed to be serving. Not a single glance was thrown in his direction. David wasn't angry, he wasn't even frustrated, not yet. But there was a quiet disappointment that washed over him. It wasn't the first time he had been ignored in a place like this, and he had long come to expect such treatment. He had learned not to take it personally, knowing that sometimes people simply didn't care about others, especially when they weren't dressed in a suit or carrying an air of importance. Yet, today, as he stood there, he couldn't help but feel a small pang of loneliness. As David stood near the door, feeling like an invisible man in a sea of busy workers, it was Lily who broke the silence. She had been silently working in the background, serving food and taking orders with a smile that seemed to radiate warmth, even in the most mundane of moments. Unlike the others, she wasn't preoccupied with gossip or scrolling through her phone. Lily was focused, determined to treat every customer with respect, no matter who they were. She noticed David right away. his hesitant stance at the entrance, the way he was trying not to impose but still hoping for a friendly face. It was clear to her that he had been overlooked, dismissed like so many others before him. But Lily wasn't like the rest of her co-workers. She wasn't one to pass judgment based on appearance, and she certainly didn't subscribe to the idea that some customers were more important than others. She was taught early on that kindness cost nothing but meant everything. So without a second thought, she set down the tray of drinks she was carrying and walked toward David. Her footsteps were light but purposeful as she approached him with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Diner Co." she greeted him, her voice soft but genuine. "Can I get you a seat or help you with the menu?" David was caught off guard by the sudden kindness. The way her words seemed to pull him out of the haze of invisibility he had felt in the past few minutes. For the first time that day, he felt seen, not just as another customer, but as a person. There was something different about Lily's approach, something sincere, something that couldn't be faked. It wasn't just her words that caught his attention. It was the way she looked at him, the genuine care in her eyes. She wasn't just doing her job. She was truly connecting with him in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't until that moment that David realized how rare kindness had become in places like the Diner Co. And as Lily led him to a booth, making sure he was comfortable and asking if he needed anything, David couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He had been in and out of restaurants countless times, but this was different. This felt real. David sat down at the booth, his mind still processing the unexpected kindness he had just received. He watched as Lily effortlessly navigated the restaurant, helping customers, cleaning tables, and offering a kind word here and there. It was clear to him that she wasn't just a waitress. She was someone who genuinely cared about the people around her. As he waited for his order, David found himself thinking about how rare it was to encounter someone like her. Most people, especially in places like this, were just going through the motions, punching in hours, serving food, and waiting for the clock to run out. But Lily wasn't like that. She didn't seem to be looking for a reward or recognition. It was as if kindness was simply second nature to her. The more David thought about it, the more he realized how much he had been missing in his own life. In his line of work, he was used to being dismissed, used to people only caring about what they could get from him. But Lily had treated him with the same level of respect and courtesy she gave to every other person who walked through that door, no matter who they were or what they had to offer. It was humbling, and for the first time in a while, David felt something stir inside him, a sense of hope, perhaps, that kindness could still exist, even in the most unexpected places. As Lily returned with David's meal, she placed the plate in front of him with a warm smile. She asked if everything was to his liking and made sure he had everything he needed before walking away, but before she turned her back, David stopped her. "Lily, I just wanted to thank you for today," he said, his voice sincere. "I don't think I've ever been treated with such kindness in a place like this. It's rare to find someone who actually cares. It means more than you know." Lily paused, surprised by his words. She had never expected anyone to thank her for doing something so simple, so natural to her. But as she looked at David, she saw a quiet sincerity in his eyes that made her smile. "You're very welcome," she said, her voice soft. "It's my pleasure." And with that, she turned to walk away, but not without noticing the small smile that had spread across David's face. It was the kind of smile that only someone who had truly felt seen could give. As she continued with her duties, she didn't think much of the encounter. To her, it was just another moment of doing what was right, but to David, it was a reminder of something he had almost forgotten. That kindness mattered, that a simple gesture could change someone's day, and that sometimes the most unexpected people could make the biggest impact. As David finished his meal and left the Diner Co., he found himself feeling lighter than he had in a long time, a quiet appreciation for the world around him growing in his heart. And as for Lily, she continued on with her work, unknowingly touching another person's life with the simple act of kindness, one that would stay with David long after he left the restaurant. David Mitchell had kept his identity a secret from the very moment he walked into the Diner Co. He wasn't one to flaunt his status, especially in a place that seemed to function on a rather ordinary level of customer service. He often visited his restaurants unannounced, wanting to see how they operated without the polish and performance that sometimes came when management was expected. He had seen it all before. Staff members acting as if the job was beneath them, treating customers with indifference, and offering nothing more than the bare minimum. But today, something was different. As he sat quietly in the booth, watching Lily as she moved around the restaurant, it was clear that she wasn't like the others. While many of the staff members appeared distracted or disengaged, Lily moved with purpose, her demeanor kind and her smile genuine. She was interacting with the customers, engaging with them, ensuring that they felt welcomed. She wasn't performing for the sake of the job, she was performing because it was who she was. David watched as Lily treated every customer, regardless of their appearance or social status, with the same level of respect and warmth. She wasn't just going through the motions, she was truly present, and it impressed him deeply. To him, that was something rare, a true mark of character in a world that often overlooked such things. The more he observed her, the more he realized just how special Lily was. It wasn't just the way she smiled, or the way she efficiently handled orders, it was the way she treated people with respect. As David sat there quietly, he couldn't help but feel grateful for her kindness. He had been in his share of restaurants, in his share of positions where people treated him differently because of who he was, but here, at the Diner Co., Lily made him feel like a person, not a customer or an owner. It made him question why that was so rare in the world of business today. His mind wandered back to the times when he had visited other locations, the ones where employees greeted him with a forced smile, eager to get him in and out, treating him as just another transaction. But Lily was different. She was genuine, and that alone was enough to make David want to reveal his identity to her. Lily continued to serve David as she would any other customer, unaware of the man sitting across from her. She treated him with the same professionalism and respect that she had shown to everyone else that day. She didn't recognize him as the owner of the restaurant chain, and frankly, it didn't matter to her. David had never been the type to introduce himself as someone important. In fact, he preferred it that way. It wasn't about the title or the recognition, it was about how he was treated. And Lily had been treating him the same way she treated everyone else, without judgment, without any preconceived notions. As she placed his food in front of him, she asked if everything was to his liking, her eyes bright with genuine curiosity. She wasn't looking for praise or validation. She was simply doing her job with care and attention. To Lily, David was just another customer, someone she was responsible for making comfortable. She wasn't fazed by his reserved demeanor or the quiet confidence he carried with him. It didn't matter that he was dressed simply or that he hadn't tried to draw attention to himself. All that mattered was that he was there, and it was her job to provide the best service she could. As she walked away from the table, David couldn't help but smile. It was refreshing to see someone who didn't try to impress, who wasn't looking for a promotion or recognition. Lily simply did her job because it was the right thing to do, and David found himself admiring that more than he expected. He watched her as she continued to move around the restaurant, interacting with the other customers, and he realized that, for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. Lily wasn't trying to win him over. She wasn't trying to gain favor. She was just being herself, and that was enough. David continued to observe Lily for the rest of his meal, impressed by her work ethic and the way she effortlessly handled the ebb and flow of the restaurant. She wasn't perfect, of course. There were moments when the restaurant got chaotic, when orders were rushed and when things didn't go according to plan, but Lily took it all in stride. She never lost her composure, never raised her voice, and never once seemed flustered. The other staff members, on the other hand, seemed to be perpetually overwhelmed, snipping at each other, letting their frustration show. But not Lily. She remained calm, collected, and kind. It was clear to David that she wasn't just here to make a paycheck. She was here because she cared, and that was something that couldn't be faked. He had seen countless employees over the years, people who worked for the sole purpose of getting by, doing just enough to get through the day. But Lily wasn't like that. She was different, and it was a rarity in the world of business. As he finished his meal and prepared to leave, David found himself reflecting on the kind of person he wanted to work with. He had built the Diner Co. from the ground up, and over the years he had been through his fair share of struggles and disappointments. He had witnessed the rise and fall of many people, employees who had come and gone, but few had left an impression on him the way Lily had. Her sincerity, her genuine care for others was something he wanted more of in his business. He realized that, in a world that often values productivity and profit over people, Lily was a shining example of what a company needed. A person who was driven by more than just the bottom line. She was driven by something deeper, a sense of duty, of kindness, and of respect. And David couldn't help but think that, with people like her leading the way, the Diner Co. could be something truly special. When it was time for David to leave, he did so quietly, not wanting to draw attention to himself. He had made up his mind. He would talk to Lily. He would introduce himself, tell her who he was, and see if she was willing to work alongside him to help build something better, something with more heart and soul. As he made his way to the door, he paused for a moment and glanced back at Lily. She was busy with another customer, handling their request with the same level of attention and care she had given him. There was no hint of recognition in her eyes, no spark of realization that she had just served the owner of the entire restaurant chain. And that, David realized, was exactly how it should be. She treated him like everyone else, with respect, and that was the kind of person he wanted to work with. As he stepped out into the cool night air, he felt a sense of determination. He had seen the potential in Lily, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. It was time to make a change, not just in the business, but in the way people were treated. The Diner Co. could be so much more, and Lily was the person to help lead that change. David made the decision then and there that he would return the next day. He would speak to Lily, not as the owner of the Diner Co., but as someone who recognized true talent and kindness when he saw it. He knew it wasn't going to be easy. Changing the culture of a company was never simple, but with Lily by his side, he was certain that they could do it. The restaurant would no longer be a place where people came to be ignored or dismissed. It would be a place where everyone, no matter their background, was treated with dignity and respect. And in that moment, as David walked away from the Diner Co., he knew that the real change was just beginning. Lily Brooks stepped into the Diner Co. the next morning, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filling the air, but something felt different. It wasn't the usual bustling energy of a Friday morning rush. Today, there was a subtle tension in the atmosphere. As she walked past the booths and the counter, she noticed the way the staff was moving, with a kind of unease in their steps. The usual hum of chatter seemed subdued, replaced by quiet whispers exchanged behind closed doors. Lily tried to shake off the feeling that something was off. She was used to the occasional tension between the employees, but this felt more palpable, more pressing. It was as though the air had thickened overnight, and she couldn't put her finger on why. The usual crew, including Brian and Kate, exchanged glances when she entered, but there was no smile, no greeting. Instead, their eyes lingered on her for a second too long, and Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. It wasn't the usual friendly acknowledgement, but something else. Something that suggested they knew something she didn't. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had become the subject of their quiet conversations. As she made her way to the back, she noticed Brian giving her a glance from the corner of his eye, his expression unreadable. Kate, who usually greeted her with a cheerful wave, merely nodded curtly before returning to the register. They both acted like they were on edge, and Lily's gut told her that something had happened. But what? She couldn't tell if it was just her imagination or if something bigger had shifted overnight. Was it about her performance? Had she unknowingly crossed a line? She had served David Mitchell the night before, but she hadn't thought much of it at the time. He was just another customer to her. Yet, as she thought about it more, she began to wonder if that moment of genuine kindness had set something in motion, something that she wasn't yet privy to. She decided not to dwell on it too much. Maybe it was just nerves. The customers were starting to trickle in and she had a job to do. However, as she was putting on her apron, preparing for another busy shift, the feeling of unease crept back. That's when George Davis, the manager, appeared in the doorway, calling her name in a tone that immediately made her heart skip a beat. "Lily, can you come to my office for a minute?" he asked. His voice was flat, neutral, but Lily couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety. She had been called into the office a few times before for performance reviews or casual chats about the day-to-day operations, but this time felt different. There was no warmth in George's voice, no friendly invitation, just a simple cold request that made her stomach churn. Lily nodded, forcing a smile as she made her way to the back of the restaurant. Her mind raced as she walked down the narrow hallway to the manager's office. Was she about to get reprimanded for something she had done wrong? Was she going to be told that she wasn't living up to the expectations of the team? Or worse, was she about to lose her job altogether? The thoughts swirled in her head, but she tried to push them aside. She had no idea what was going on, but she knew she had to face whatever was coming. As she stepped into George's office, he was sitting behind his desk, staring at the computer screen, his fingers drumming lightly on the edge of his desk. He didn't look up immediately. The office was stuffy, the scent of old paper and stale coffee filling the air. It was a room she had walked into countless times before. But today, it felt oppressive, like the walls were closing in. She closed the door behind her and stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do or say. Finally, George looked up, his expression unreadable. He gestured for her to take a seat. "Lily," he began, his tone still impersonal. "We need to have a talk." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Lily sat down, her hands folded in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. She had worked here for years, done her job with dedication. But in that moment she felt small, like she was just a cog in a machine that could be replaced at any time. "You've been doing good work," George continued, his voice lacking the warmth it usually held. "But there are concerns that need to be addressed." The vague nature of his words only heightened the anxiety building in Lily's chest. What concerns? Was she in trouble? She had followed the rules, done her best to stay out of the drama, but somehow she had a sinking feeling that something had changed. "You've been noticed," George said after a pause, his eyes locking with hers. "But not necessarily in the way you think." Lily frowned, her confusion deepening. She had been noticed? By who? And for what? George's eyes flickered briefly to the door before returning to her. "The higher-ups have been observing the staff," he said slowly, his words calculated. "And let's just say, there are some things that have come to light. Some people have raised concerns about the way things are run around here." Lily's heart sank as she tried to piece together what he meant. Was it about the way she treated customers? Had her kindness been seen as a weakness? "Is this about me?" she finally asked, her voice shaky but determined to know the truth. George didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as if evaluating her. For a moment, Lily thought he might say something else, something that would give her clarity, but instead he simply nodded. "You've done something that stirred the waters," he said cryptically, "and it's going to affect more than just you." The room fell silent as Lily tried to process what he was saying. She had been caught up in something bigger than herself, something she hadn't even fully understood yet. What had she done? All she knew was that something had shifted, and now her future at the Dynaco was hanging in the balance. Lily sat there in George's office, trying to process his words, but nothing seemed to make sense. He had just told her that she was being let go, and for reasons that felt completely unjust. "Your attitude has become a problem," George had said, his voice still cold and emotionless. Lily's heart sank at the words, and her hands trembled as she fought to keep her composure. She had been working at the Dynaco for years, and never once had she been anything but respectful, hard-working, and committed to the job. Yet here she was, being told that her attitude was the reason for her dismissal. George's words cut through her like a knife, especially since she knew deep down that this wasn't about her attitude at all. It was something else, something hidden beneath the surface. Lily thought back to the night before, when she had served David Mitchell with nothing but kindness, treating him with the respect that every customer deserved, regardless of their appearance. She had never considered it a big deal. but perhaps it had been noticed by the wrong people. As the reality of what was happening settled in, the weight of the situation became unbearable. How could they fire her for doing the right thing? How could they let her go when she had shown nothing but integrity? Lily could feel her pulse quickening as confusion clouded her thoughts. She didn't want to believe it, but it seemed like the reason for her firing was far more personal than it appeared. George's cold demeanor didn't help matters. There was no sign of regret or even an attempt to explain the situation further. The words personal vendetta floated through Lily's mind, but she quickly pushed them away. She wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the way things were unfolding felt wrong. Her chest tightened as George continued to speak, but it all felt like a blur. He was explaining the official reasons for her termination, something about needing to reinforce company values. But Lily wasn't listening anymore. All she could think about was how unjust this all was. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had been working hard, treating people with kindness, and doing her job with pride. So why was she being punished for it? When George finally stopped talking, Lily stood up, her legs shaky but determined. She didn't even bother to respond. There was nothing more to say. The decision had been made, and nothing was going to change that. She felt numb as she walked out of the office, her heart heavy with a sense of betrayal. As she walked through the diner, she could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, some of them sympathetic, others indifferent. Brian and Kate were standing near the counter, but neither of them said a word. They just watched her pass by, their expressions unreadable. Lily felt like a failure. She had tried so hard to be the person who did the right thing, who stood up for what was fair, but it felt like it had all been for nothing. As she reached the door, she paused, looking back at the diner she had called her workplace for so long. The familiar scent of food, the laughter of customers, and the hum of conversations that had once made her feel at home now seemed foreign, distant. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The decision to let her go had been made, but Lily was not the kind of person to walk away quietly. She couldn't just accept this without understanding why it had happened. What had really led to this moment? As devastated as she felt, there was something else rising within her: resolve. She was going to figure this out. She wasn't going to let her termination be a result of some petty personal grudge. She had done nothing wrong, and she would find out who had caused this, and why. The drive home was long and quiet. Lily's mind raced with questions, but she had no answers. She thought about David Mitchell, the man she had treated with respect the night before. Was he somehow involved in this? Had he spoken out against her? She doubted it. He seemed like a genuinely decent man, and he had seemed grateful for her service. But something wasn't right, and Lily needed to know what it was. When she finally arrived home, she found herself pacing the apartment, unable to sit still. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of frustration and confusion. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and Lily picked it up absently, not expecting anything important. But when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was an unknown number, and something in her gut told her it was important. She answered the call, her voice tense as she said, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm, smooth, and unfamiliar. "Hello, Lily Brooks," the man said. "This is David Mitchell." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say. "I know you're probably confused right now," David continued, "but I wanted to reach out and explain what happened." Lily's mind raced, and her voice trembled slightly as she asked, "Why was I fired?" David paused before answering, his tone measured and thoughtful. "Lily, I'm sorry you had to go through this," he said. "I'm the owner of the Diner Co. I was there last night, and I saw how you treated me with kindness and respect even when no one else did. But the truth is, there are people in your workplace who don't believe in fairness. They've been running things behind the scenes in a way that isn't right, and it's been going on for far too long." Lily's heart pounded as she listened to David's words, but there was something comforting in his voice, something that gave her hope. "I didn't want to see someone like you treated unfairly," he said. "You deserve better, and I want to make it right. You've done nothing wrong, and I promise you that." Lily didn't know what to say. She was overwhelmed, confused, and exhausted from everything that had happened. But one thing was clear now. There was more to this situation than she had realized. The firing wasn't about her. It was about something bigger, something that had been festering within the company for a long time. And Lily wasn't going to let it slide. She was going to find out the truth. She was going to fight for herself. And most importantly, she was going to make sure that those who had wronged her wouldn't get away with it. The phone rang late in the afternoon, and Lily felt a slight flutter in her chest when she saw the name on the screen, David Mitchell. She had been expecting a follow-up from him after their brief conversation the night before, but she wasn't sure what to expect. Tentatively, she picked up the phone, her voice cautious. "Hello?" On the other end, David's voice was calm and steady, a reassuring presence amid the storm she had been weathering. "Hi, Lily, it's David. I was hoping we could meet tomorrow." Lily's heart raced a little faster. After everything that had happened, being fired without explanation, walking out of the diner in shock, David's words felt like a lifeline. I'd like that," she said, her voice soft but determined. "When and where?" David gave her the details of a quiet cafe downtown, a place where they could talk away from the noise and distractions of her normal life. As she hung up the phone, a swirl of emotions rushed over her. She wasn't sure what this meeting would lead to, but something about it felt different from the rest. This wasn't just another corporate meeting or a random phone call. It felt like a moment of truth, something important. The next day, Lily arrived at the cafe feeling more nervous than she cared to admit. The past few days had been a whirlwind of confusion and hurt, and she wasn't sure what to expect from this meeting. As she entered the cafe, the familiar hum of conversation and the comforting scent of coffee filled the air. She spotted David almost immediately, sitting at a table by the window. His presence was calm and inviting, as though he were waiting to offer her something more than just an explanation. He seemed to be offering her a chance. Lily made her way over, her footsteps light but heavy with anticipation. As she sat down across from him, David gave her a warm, reassuring smile. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said, his tone steady and compassionate. Lily nodded, grateful for his kindness but still unsure of where this was headed. For a moment neither of them spoke. The weight of the last few days hung in the air between them, unspoken but palpable. Finally, David broke the silence. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, Lily. No one should be punished for doing the right thing. You treated me with kindness and respect, and that's why I wanted to talk to you." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words until now. She had been questioning everything, her actions, her choices, her worth. But David's words grounded her. "It's been a tough few days," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "I did the right thing, and now I'm paying for it. I was fired because I was kind. I tried to treat everyone fairly, to do my job with integrity, and yet it wasn't enough. It never felt like it was enough." She paused, struggling to keep her emotions in check. David listened attentively, his eyes never leaving hers as he processed what she had said. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful but resolute. "Lily, you didn't just do the right thing," he said, his voice firm. "You showed something that's rare in the world today: authenticity. You treated people with respect no matter who they were, and that's a quality that's hard to find." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I've been watching the dynamics at the Dynaco for a while now. The culture there, favoritism, unfair treatment, disrespect, it's been going on for too long. But you, Lily, you're different. You stood up for what's right, and you didn't back down." A sense of clarity washed over Lily, but a wave of uncertainty followed quickly. She wasn't sure what David was offering her. Could she really go back to the Dynaco after everything that had happened? After the humiliation, the uncertainty? "I don't know if I can go back," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's hard to imagine walking back into that place after what happened. I was fired without reason, and it feels like I don't belong there anymore." David gave her a knowing smile, his eyes reflecting understanding. "I get it. I really do. But here's the thing, Lily. The Diner Co. needs people like you, people who have integrity, who understand that leadership isn't just about telling people what to do, it's about setting an example. I want you to come back." His words hung in the air, heavy and filled with meaning. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Could she really return to that place? After everything? David continued, "I can't promise that everything will change overnight, but I can promise you that I'll be behind you. I want to give you the opportunity to make a real difference, to create the kind of work environment that's based on respect and fairness. I want to give you the power to help change the culture there." Lily stared at him, her mind racing. A part of her wanted to jump at the opportunity, to return and prove that she could make a difference. But another part of her feared going back into that toxic environment, unsure if she had the strength to face the people who had wronged her. David, sensing her hesitation, gave her a small, encouraging smile. "The decision is yours, Lily. I'm not asking you to make a choice right now, but I want you to know that if you do decide to come back, I'll make sure you have the support you need, and I'll be there every step of the way." The offer hung between them like a lifeline, but the decision was hers to make. Would she take the risk and return to the Diner Co. to fight for the fairness and respect she knew it deserved? Or would she walk away, leaving behind the chance to be part of the change she so deeply wanted to see? Lily didn't know yet. She needed time to think. But for the first time in days, she felt a sense of hope, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she could turn this situation around. The following morning, the sun filtered softly through the windows of the cafe where Lily and David had met the day before. David sat there, waiting, calm as ever, while Lily arrived with a mixture of anticipation and lingering uncertainty. She had spent the night turning the events over in her mind, weighing the risks and the rewards of the decision that lay before her. She wasn't sure what had brought her to this point. Was it hope? Or the fear of staying in the same place, in the same toxic environment that had nearly broken her? But as she walked towards David, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. "Morning, Lily," David greeted her with a warm smile as she sat down, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. He looked at her, his gaze steady, before taking a moment to speak. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about wanting to make a change." Lily nodded, unsure where this conversation was headed. The possibility of returning to the Diner Co. still felt surreal, as though she was stepping into a future she wasn't sure she was ready for. But David's calm presence was a grounding force. "I know it's not easy to just walk back in there after what happened, but I want to give you the chance to truly make a difference," David continued. "Lily, I want to offer you a role." She blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "A role?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to offer you the position of manager at the Diner Co.," David said, his tone firm yet reassuring. He leaned forward slightly, as if offering her not just a job, but a key to a new beginning. "You've shown that you have the character, the integrity, and the understanding of how to treat people with respect. I believe you're the right person to lead this place into a new chapter." Lily sat there, speechless, her mind spinning. She had never considered herself in a leadership role before. She had been a waitress, nothing more than a cog in a system that had no place for kindness or fairness. To think that David, a man with power and vision, would trust her with such a responsibility was both humbling and intimidating. "David, I don't know if I'm the right person for this," she admitted, her voice tinged with doubt. "I've never been a manager before. I don't know if I have what it takes to run a whole restaurant." David nodded thoughtfully, understanding the hesitation in her voice. He had seen the self-doubt in her eyes, and he recognized the struggle within her. But he had also seen something else, a spark of resilience that refused to be extinguished. "Lily, I've been watching you for a long time," David said softly, his voice steady and sure. "What you did at the Diner Co., standing up for what was right, treating people with respect, even when it wasn't easy. It showed me who you really are. You have the heart of a leader, even if you don't see it yourself." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. "Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about having the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. I know you can do this. Lily felt a swell of emotions rise within her. David's belief in her was overwhelming, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she considered the possibility that maybe she could rise to the challenge. But the doubt still clung to her, like shadows she couldn't shake. "What if I fail?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "What if I walk in there and everything falls apart?" David smiled gently, a glimmer of encouragement in his eyes. "Lily, there's always a risk in change. But if you don't take the chance, you'll never know what you're truly capable of. And I'll be here to support you, every step of the way. I'm not asking you to make a decision today. Take some time, think about it. You don't have to rush." Lily nodded slowly, the weight of the decision still pressing on her shoulders. She felt as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into an uncertain future. But for the first time in a long while, she also felt something else. Hope. David's belief in her wasn't just about the job. It was about the person she could become. He wasn't offering her a promotion. He was offering her the chance to lead with integrity, to change a broken system, to make a real difference. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together on the table. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I promise I'll think about it." David smiled and leaned back in his chair, his eyes filled with quiet confidence. "Take your time, Lily. When you're ready, you'll know. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. You have a lot more inside you than you realize." As they parted ways, Lily stepped out into the cool air, her mind buzzing with thoughts. The weight of the decision was heavy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a choice. This wasn't just about whether or not to return to the Dynaco. It was about choosing who she wanted to be, what kind of person she wanted to become. And maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to take control of her own destiny. After a long and restless night, Lily woke up with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in months. The decision weighed on her, but as she lay in bed, reflecting on everything David had said, she realized something. She had spent so much of her life trying to survive, to avoid conflict, to keep her head down and fit into the mold others had set for her. But what David had offered wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to rewrite her own story, to show that she could lead with kindness and integrity, and maybe, just maybe, change the culture at the Dynaco for good. She had always dreamed of a place where employees weren't just workers, but valued members of a team, where customers were treated with respect, no matter who they were. The chance to build that kind of environment was in her hands now. With a deep breath, Lily picked up her phone and dialed David's number. She had made up her mind. "David," she said when he answered, her voice steady but full of determination. "I've thought it over, and I'm ready. I accept the offer to become the new manager of the Dynaco." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then David's voice, warm and encouraging, filled her ears. "Lily, that's the best news I've heard all day. I knew you had it in you." His words were reassuring, but they didn't make her feel invincible. No, that feeling came from within. She was still nervous, unsure of what exactly the future would hold, but there was also a spark in her heart. This was her chance to build something real, to turn around the environment at the Dynaco, and she wasn't going to back down. "I'm ready to do this," Lily replied, her voice more confident now. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," David said, his tone unwavering. "You've got what it takes, Lily. Now, let's make sure the Dynaco becomes a place where everyone can thrive." After they hung up, Lily sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of her decision settle in. She had accepted the role, but now came the hard part, stepping into it. The task ahead of her was daunting. There was so much work to do. The culture of the Dynaco was broken. Favoritism ran rampant, and the employees who had been loyal to the toxic status quo weren't going to be easy to win over. And then there was the challenge of winning the respect of the team. Many of them had seen her as just another waitress, not capable of leading, but that was about to change. She wasn't just going to be a manager, She was going to be a force for change. With renewed determination, Lily stood up, straightening her shoulders. The restaurant wasn't perfect, but it could be, and she was going to be the one to make it happen. She knew there would be challenges, there always were, but she was no stranger to overcoming obstacles. She had already faced more than most people would in a lifetime, and each time she had come out stronger. Now it was time to do it again, this time for the people who worked at the Diner Co., for the customers, and for herself. She could no longer be the silent observer, the one who waited for change to happen. She had to be the change. As Lily prepared for her first day as manager, she took a deep breath and looked in the mirror, seeing herself in a new light. This was her moment, and she was ready for it. There was still so much work to be done, so much to prove, but she no longer feared the future. In fact, for the first time in a long while, she was excited to face it. The road ahead would be challenging, but she wasn't walking it alone. David had offered his support, and she knew she could count on him. But this time, the real change had to come from within her. As Lily walked out the door that morning, the sun shone brightly, and she took the first step into her new role. This was just the beginning, and she was determined to make it count. Lily's first day as the new manager at the Diner Co. was a surreal experience. As she walked through the familiar glass doors, she could feel the weight of the moment. The restaurant, once a place where she was just another face behind the counter, was now her domain. She was in charge, and that thought sent a thrill through her, though it was quickly tempered by a growing sense of apprehension. As she made her way behind the counter, the usual hum of activity seemed to slow. Her co-workers, Monica, Jake, and the others, paused in their tasks, glancing up in surprise as they noticed her new position. Their expressions varied from confusion to open disbelief. Monica, the longtime server who had worked with Lily since the beginning, gave her a skeptical once-over, her eyes narrowing in distaste. Jake, who had always kept to himself, gave a slight shrug, clearly unimpressed. Lily knew she had earned the position, but seeing their reactions made her second-guess her decision for a fleeting moment. She had worked so hard to get here, but now she had to prove herself. She didn't have the luxury of time or understanding. She had to make her presence felt and show that she belonged. As she approached the front counter, Monica was the first to break the silence. "So, you're the boss now?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Guess we all have to kiss up to you now?" Lily could feel the sting of Monica's words, but she didn't flinch. She knew this was part of the process. There would be resistance, especially from those who felt threatened by her sudden rise, but Lily was determined to not let their negativity cloud her judgment. She wasn't here to fight them. She was here to lead them. "I'm here to make things better, Monica," Lily replied calmly, her voice steady. "That's all." The other employees watched the exchange, some with raised eyebrows, others with quiet amusement. Monica's harsh words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, before the restaurant's usual clatter of dishes and the buzz of the kitchen returned. But the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavy, and the team's energy had gone from bustling to tense. Lily knew the road ahead would be difficult. She had never been a manager before, and she had no illusions about how hard it would be to change the toxic culture that had festered for so long, but she was determined. She took her place behind the counter, the same spot she had worked at countless times before, only now her role had changed. She wasn't just taking orders. She was setting the tone for everyone else in the restaurant. As the morning rush continued, Lily made sure to stay calm and focused. She worked with the team, taking the same care with each task as she always had. She served the customers with the same kindness and efficiency, making sure they felt heard and valued, but beneath the surface, she could feel the resistance. Jake had taken to moving slower than usual, and Monica seemed to go out of her way to avoid eye contact, her attitude more obvious with every passing minute. But Lily didn't let it shake her. She remained focused on leading by example, treating every customer with respect and ensuring that the restaurant ran smoothly. As the hours passed, the tension in the air slowly began to dissipate. It wasn't gone completely. Lily knew it would take time to earn her co-workers' trust and respect, but the initial hostility had softened. Monica and Jake's open dissatisfaction with her new role was still palpable, But Lily refused to let it derail her mission. She could already see small victories in her approach. The new employees, those who hadn't been part of the old system, were responding well to her leadership. They were eager to learn, eager to be part of something different. They listened when she spoke, followed her lead, and worked as a team. And that was the first step. She knew she couldn't change everything in a single day, but this was how it had to start, with patience, consistency, and a willingness to do the work. After a few hours, Monica came up to her, her arms crossed but her tone less sharp. "I don't know what you're trying to do here," she said quietly, "but you're not going to change things overnight." Lily turned to her, giving her a calm smile. "I'm not trying to change everything overnight, Monica," she said softly. "I just want to make sure we all treat each other with respect. If we can start there, the rest will follow." There was a long silence as Monica studied her, her eyes narrowing as if she were weighing Lily's words. Finally, she gave a small, reluctant nod before turning back to her station. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Lily couldn't afford to take their negativity personally. She knew that gaining their respect wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she had the strength to do it. As the evening approached and the dinner rush kicked into full gear, the energy in the Dynaco had shifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. The team was more cohesive, and customers seemed to notice the difference. The kindness that had once been rare in the restaurant was starting to feel more common. Lily stood behind the counter, watching the team at work, feeling a sense of pride swell in her chest. She wasn't just another employee anymore, she was the leader, and though it hadn't been easy, she was beginning to see the impact of her leadership. And this was just the beginning. Lily's second week as manager at the Dynaco was proving to be even more challenging than she had anticipated. While she had made strides in earning the respect of some employees, Monica and Jake had become a constant source of frustration. They seemed determined to make her job as difficult as possible, subtly undermining her authority at every turn. It started small. At first, Monica would drag her feet when it came time to stock supplies, delaying the kitchen's ability to prepare orders efficiently. She would make snide comments when Lily wasn't around, talking behind her back about how things used to be better under the old management. Jake, on the other hand, would hover near the soda station, taking his time to fill orders as if he were deliberately slowing down the flow of the restaurant. At first, Lily tried to stay calm, hoping the situation would resolve itself. She didn't want to escalate things too quickly. But as the days passed, it became clear that this wasn't just passive resistance, it was intentional sabotage. Monica and Jake were not only refusing to cooperate, they were actively working against her. Orders were delayed, customers complained, and the team, once cohesive, seemed to fracture under the weight of the growing tension. Every day, Lily felt the pressure mounting. She wasn't just fighting against the resistance of her co-workers, she was fighting for the survival of the restaurant itself. The operation was teetering on the edge, and if things didn't improve soon, the consequences would be severe. But Lily wasn't one to back down. She knew that the only way to confront this was head-on. One evening, during a particularly hectic dinner rush, she watched as Monica took her time wiping down the counter, slowing the process just enough to create a bottleneck of orders piling up in the kitchen. The kitchen staff was frustrated, the customers were getting restless, and the whole atmosphere felt like it was on the verge of spiraling out of control. Lily took a deep breath and walked over to Monica, her steps purposeful. "Monica, we need to keep things moving," she said, her voice steady but firm. "The orders are getting backed up and we're falling behind." Monica glanced up at her, a smirk playing on her lips. "What's the rush? They'll wait," she replied nonchalantly. Lily's jaw tightened, but she refused to let Monica's attitude provoke her. "That's not how we do things here," she replied calmly. "Every customer matters. If we don't do our jobs, we're not just making the restaurant look bad, we're making the customers feel unimportant." Monica rolled her eyes and made a dramatic gesture, but she continued wiping down the counter, still at a glacial pace. Lily could feel her patience thinning, but she wasn't about to let Monica win. She turned away, focusing on the rest of the staff. The situation wasn't ideal, but she had learned that maintaining composure in the face of resistance was essential. If she let Monica's antics get to her, the entire restaurant would fall into chaos. As the night dragged on, Jake joined in, deliberately stalling at the drink station and making sarcastic remarks under his breath whenever Lily gave him a direction. It was clear they had both made a decision. They were going to make her leadership as difficult as possible. But Lily wasn't deterred. She didn't have the luxury of letting them destroy the momentum she had built. Instead, she focused on the job at hand, giving her full attention to the customers who came through the door, making sure their needs were met and their orders were accurate. With every positive interaction, she felt her resolve grow stronger. Despite Monica and Jake's efforts to undermine her, she knew that her professionalism would speak louder than their attempts to sabotage her. She kept up her pace, ensuring the restaurant was running smoothly, even when the team seemed intent on testing her at every turn. The next morning, the situation reached a boiling point. Lily had just finished greeting a table of regulars when she noticed Jake dragging his feet at the grill, leaving a burger on the heat for far too long. The overcooked burger was a potential disaster waiting to happen, but instead of stepping in to fix it, Jake stood back with his arms crossed, watching as the minutes ticked by. Lily's blood boiled, but she kept her emotions in check. She couldn't afford to let Jake's passive-aggressive behavior get the best of her. She walked over to the grill, took a deep breath, and turned to him. "Jake, this is the second time this week the orders have been messed up. You need to stay on top of the grill or we're going to lose customers," she said, her tone professional but firm. He looked at her, his expression unchanging. "Maybe you should do it if it's so important," he replied, shrugging. "I'm just one guy. I can't do it all." Lily's eyes locked with his. She wasn't going to let him get away with this. "I trust you, Jake," she said, her voice calm but assertive. "But if you can't keep up, I'll find someone who can. We all have to step up, or none of us will succeed." The words hung in the air between them. Jake didn't respond immediately, his eyes darting away as if avoiding her gaze. It wasn't the confrontation she wanted, but it was a step in the right direction. Lily was slowly learning how to handle the resistance. She didn't need to yell or play power games. She just needed to stay consistent, professional, and focused on what mattered, taking care of the customers and ensuring that the team worked together. She knew that as long as she kept her head cool and her standards high, she would eventually win the respect of her co-workers. Monica and Jake's resistance wasn't a reflection of her worth. It was a reflection of their inability to adapt to change. And as the days went on, Lily was proving that change was exactly what the Diner Co. needed. It wouldn't happen overnight, but she was ready to fight for it. David had been quietly watching from the corner of the restaurant, his eyes carefully observing Lily's every move. He had already seen glimpses of her potential when they had met previously, but today was a different story. As the new manager, she was now under the microscope, and everything she did would be scrutinized by her team and her customers. He could see the stress in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Determination. She wasn't backing down, even as the pressure mounted from all sides. Monica and Jake's resistance hadn't let up, and the staff had become increasingly divided. But Lily remained calm, focused, and determined to prove herself. David watched as Lily guided her team through the busiest lunch rush the restaurant had seen in weeks. Despite the chaos that surrounded her, she kept her head cool. When orders started piling up, she quickly delegated tasks, ensuring that everyone knew their responsibilities. She moved quickly but with purpose, her eyes scanning the room for any potential problems that could disrupt the flow of service. It was clear to David that she was already gaining a handle on her role. She wasn't just managing the tasks at hand, she was managing the dynamics of the team. It wasn't an easy feat, especially with Monica and Jake undermining her at every opportunity, but Lily handled them with grace. When Monica made a subtle jab about her new position, Lily didn't flinch. She simply smiled, acknowledged the comment, and continued her work without getting caught in the drama. When Jake dragged his feet at the drink station, Lily calmly approached him, reminded him of his responsibilities, and didn't allow his attitude to derail the operation. David could see that her leadership was starting to make an impact. The employees who had once been skeptical of her were now watching her more closely, evaluating how she responded to the challenges. Some were starting to soften their attitudes, recognizing that she wasn't just there to boss them around. She was there to create a better environment. It wasn't perfect yet, but the shift was palpable. David was impressed. He knew that leading in a situation like this wasn't easy, especially when there were so many moving parts to consider. The restaurant was a fast-paced environment, and the pressure to perform was relentless. But Lily wasn't letting the chaos get the best of her. She stayed focused on what was important: the customers, the quality of service, and the well-being of her team. Throughout the afternoon, David stayed in the background, content to observe from a distance. He wasn't ready to interfere yet, though he was silently cheering her on. He could see the way Lily's eyes sparkled when she managed to turn a potentially disastrous situation into a smooth, effortless transaction. She was naturally gifted at problem-solving under pressure, and her ability to stay composed was a testament to her character. As the day wore on, David found himself more and more impressed with her. She wasn't just managing a team, she was inspiring them. By the end of the shift, Lily had proven something crucial. She could lead under pressure. The restaurant had survived the chaos without any major incidents, and while the team still had some work to do, David saw enough to know that she was the right choice for the job. He had no doubt that Lily was capable of transforming the Dynaco into something better, but it would take time. The real test would come in the weeks ahead, as she continued to navigate the complexities of leadership, particularly with employees like Monica and Jake who still resisted change. However, as David quietly observed Lily's first day, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what she had already accomplished. She had stepped into the role with determination, handled the resistance with professionalism, and kept the restaurant running smoothly despite the obstacles. David knew she had what it took to succeed. The question now was whether the rest of the team would realize that too. Lily stood in the office, her posture straight and her eyes focused as she prepared to confront Monica and Jake. She knew this wasn't going to be an easy conversation, but it was one that had to happen. Monica and Jake had been undermining her leadership since day one, creating a toxic work environment for the rest of the team. They were old guards, employees who had been there for years, used to running things their way, and resistant to the changes she was trying to implement. She had given them plenty of chances to adjust, but their constant sabotage had reached a breaking point. As Monica and Jake entered the office, Lily didn't waste time. She addressed them firmly, her voice steady but commanding. "I've noticed your behavior over the last few days, and it's unacceptable," she said, locking eyes with each of them. "If you continue to work against the team, if you continue to undermine me and the changes I'm trying to bring, you will be fired." Monica scoffed, crossing her arms and glaring at Lily. "You can't tell me what to do," she snapped, her voice dripping with defiance. "We've been here longer than you, and this place was fine before you showed up." Lily kept her cool, refusing to let Monica's arrogance unsettle her. "This place wasn't fine," Lily replied. "It was full of favoritism and dysfunction, and that's not the kind of environment I want to run. You either adapt or leave. It's up to you." Without another word, Monica stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Her frustration was palpable, but Lily didn't flinch. This was just the first step in a much larger process of transforming the restaurant. It was a necessary move, and she had no intention of backing down. As the door closed behind Monica, Jake stood there, hesitant. He didn't storm out like Monica had, but he didn't exactly look like he was on Lily's side either. He stood with his arms crossed, looking down at the floor, clearly torn. "I don't know if I can do this," Jake muttered. "I've been here a long time, and things are just different now." Lily took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Jake, I get it. Change is hard. But we can't keep going the way we have been. It's not good for you, it's not good for the team, and it's certainly not good for the customers. You need to decide. Are you going to be part of this team, or are you going to keep fighting it?" Jake's silence hung in the air for a moment. His eyes flickered to the door, as though considering leaving, but instead he slowly lowered his arms and met her gaze. "I don't want to make things worse," he said quietly. "I just don't know if I can keep up with all these changes." Lily softened, realizing the internal battle Jake was facing. "I'm not asking you to change overnight," she said. "I just want you to give it a fair shot. We're all in this together, and if you want to make it work, you have a place here. But if you continue resisting, I won't be able to keep you around." Jake nodded slowly, though there was still a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "I'll try," he said, his voice barely audible. Lily nodded back, acknowledging the small victory. It wasn't a full commitment, but it was progress. She didn't expect immediate change from him. This would take time. But she knew she had to take charge and start implementing changes that would improve the workplace for everyone. As the days passed, Lily began to take control of the situation. She implemented new policies that were designed to promote fairness and respect among the staff. She introduced a new scheduling system, one that was transparent and ensured everyone got their fair share of shifts. She made sure tips were distributed equally, and she held regular team meetings to ensure everyone was on the same page. Slowly but surely, the dynamic in the restaurant began to shift. The tension that had once filled the air was starting to dissipate. The staff, while still adjusting to the changes, started to see that Lily's approach was fair. She wasn't playing favorites, and she wasn't allowing anyone to manipulate the system for their own gain. The team started working together, and customers began noticing the difference. Orders were coming out faster, service was more efficient, and the atmosphere was lighter. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a significant improvement. For the first time since Lily took charge, the restaurant was starting to feel like a place where everyone could thrive, not just the people who had been there the longest. As Lily continued to implement her changes, she knew there would be more obstacles ahead. Monica's exit was just the beginning, and Jake was still on the fence, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had a team to lead, and she was determined to make the Diner Co. a place where hard work, fairness, and respect were the foundation of everything they did. The shift in power had begun, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Lily had been running the Diner Co. with determination, tackling every challenge with the kind of leadership that would make any seasoned manager proud. But as she reviewed the restaurant's records one night, something caught her attention. The numbers weren't adding up. At first, it seemed like just another accounting mistake. But as she dug deeper, it became clear that this wasn't a simple error. There were discrepancies in the orders. Some of them seemed altered, with charges mysteriously increased or items missing from the bill. This was no mistake. Someone was deliberately tampering with the transactions. Lily's mind raced as she combed through the data, reviewing every receipt, every transaction log. The pattern was unmistakable. Orders had been changed after the fact, prices had been adjusted, and worst of all, some customers were being overcharged for their meals. This was sabotage, plain and simple. She knew she had to get to the bottom of it, but she couldn't do it alone. Lily decided to confront Jake, knowing that he had been one of the staff members she had trouble with in the past. She found him in the back of the restaurant, looking more nervous than usual. It was time to get answers. "Jake," she began, her voice calm but firm. "I've been going through the records, and I've found some discrepancies in the transactions. I need to know if you've been involved in any way." Jake shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, his eyes avoiding hers. After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice low. "I didn't want to do it," he admitted, his words laced with guilt. "But Monica, she told me to do it." Lily's stomach tightened as she processed what Jake was saying. Monica had been fired for her insubordination, but apparently her influence still lingered. "What did Monica tell you to do?" Lily pressed. Jake swallowed hard, his fingers tapping nervously on the counter. "She said it was just a little push. Make the orders slower, mess up some of the charges. Nothing too big, just enough to make it look like the place was falling apart." His voice faltered, and he looked down, ashamed. "She said it would teach you a lesson." Lily felt a cold chill run down her spine. Monica had been manipulating Jake, trying to sabotage the restaurant and get her removed from the role of manager. But Jake wasn't done. He took a deep breath and continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to do it," he repeated. "But it wasn't just Monica. It was George. He told her to do it." Lily's heart skipped a beat. George Davis, the manager who had fired her, had been behind this all along? The man who had been trying to control everything, who had been part of the toxic culture she was fighting to change, was the one pulling the strings. George? Lily echoed, her voice shaking with disbelief. He was the one who orchestrated all of this? Jake nodded, his face pale. He told Monica to mess with the orders, said it was the only way to get you to fail. He didn't want you in charge. He thought you'd ruin everything he'd worked for. The revelation hit Lily like a punch to the gut. George, the person she had trusted, the person who had been pretending to support her, was the one behind the sabotage. He had been working against her the whole time, trying to undermine her leadership and bring her down. As the weight of the situation settled in, Lily knew she had to confront George. This wasn't just about fixing a broken system. It was about taking down the root of the problem once and for all. She couldn't allow someone like George to continue running the restaurant, especially after everything he had done to sabotage her efforts. Jake, she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Thank you for being honest. I'll take it from here. Jake looked up at her, his face filled with regret. I didn't mean to make things worse, he said, his voice small. I didn't know what to do. Lily placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a small nod. I know, but now it's time to make things right. As she walked out of the back office, determination surged through her veins. She had the evidence, and now she had to take action. George had to be held accountable for his actions, and she would make sure the sabotage ended here. There was no turning back now. It was time to confront George, expose his betrayal, and finally take control of the Dynaco once and for all. As the weight of the revelation settled on Lily's shoulders, she couldn't help but feel a surge of anger, mixed with disbelief. Jake had just confirmed her worst fears. George Davis, the man she once trusted, the one who had pretended to support her, had orchestrated the entire sabotage, the manipulation, the altered orders, the delays in service. This was all part of a calculated plan to push her out of the manager's position. George had used his power to try and break her, to undermine everything she had worked so hard to build. Lily had thought that when she became manager, the biggest challenge would be gaining the respect of her co-workers. But now, it was clear that the real battle was for control of the Dynaco. George hadn't just been trying to make her fail, he had been actively plotting against her. Jake had admitted that George had paid some employees to mess with the orders and purposely delay service, the very employees she had worked with, the ones who had pretended to be on her side, were now part of a scheme to tear down everything she had fought for. Lily's mind raced as she pieced everything together. The sabotage wasn't just about small errors or inconveniences. It was about making her look incompetent, about proving that she didn't belong in the role of manager. And George, who had been in charge for so long, wanted nothing more than to get her out of the picture and return things to the way they were before she took over. Lily had always suspected that something was off in the way George managed the restaurant, but she had never imagined that he would go to such lengths to sabotage her. The more she thought about it, the more it became clear that this wasn't just a petty rivalry. It was a power struggle. George had built his own little empire at the Dynaco, and he wasn't willing to give up control without a fight. But Lily wasn't about to back down. She had already faced so much adversity to get where she was, and now that she knew the full extent of George's betrayal, there was no way she was going to let him win. It was clear to her now that this was no longer about fixing broken systems or proving she was capable. This was a fight for control of the restaurant, a fight that she couldn't afford to lose. If George had been willing to go this far to undermine her, who knew what else he was capable of? He had already shown he would stop at nothing to maintain his hold over the Dynaco, and Lily was determined to make sure that control no longer rested in his hands. As she gathered the evidence of George's actions and started formulating her plan, Lily realized that she had to act fast. This wasn't just about saving her job anymore. This was about reclaiming the restaurant for herself and her employees, about restoring fairness, and about making sure George's reign of manipulation ended once and for all. Lily knew it wouldn't be easy. She had already faced resistance from Monica, Jake, and the rest of the employees who had sided with George. But now, she had something even more powerful on her side. She had the truth. The sabotage, the lies, the manipulation, she had the evidence to bring George down. And with that knowledge, Lily was more determined than ever to take back control of the Dynaco. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about restoring integrity, fairness, and respect to the place she had fought so hard to make a difference. She wasn't going to let George win. Not now, not ever. Lily stood in front of the staff, her presence commanding the room with an intensity that had become a hallmark of her leadership. She had spent the last few days gathering evidence, preparing for this moment, and now it was time to face the truth. The atmosphere in the Dynaco was thick with tension as her employees shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Lily had always tried to create an environment where everyone felt valued and respected, but now it was clear that some had betrayed her trust. She couldn't let them continue to sabotage the restaurant, not when she had worked so hard to turn things around. With a calm, unwavering voice, she addressed the team. "I know what's been happening here. The sabotage, the messed-up orders, the manipulated charges. You all know who's responsible." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Now, I'm giving you all a chance to come clean. This is your moment to make things right." Her words hung in the air, as if daring anyone to deny the truth. The silence that followed was thick, but slowly, one by one, several employees began to speak up. There was Leah, the quiet cashier who had always kept to herself, but today she stepped forward, her eyes full of regret. I was part of it. Monica and Jake asked me to help with the orders, and I didn't speak up." Her voice trembled, but she held her head high, as if relieved to finally come clean. Then it was James, the cook who had been silent during the chaos. He sighed deeply, looking ashamed of his actions. "I messed with the kitchen orders. I didn't think it would go this far, but I should have known better." As each person admitted their role, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of honesty and accountability. Lily's heart swelled with a mix of pride and sorrow. She'd always believed in the goodness of people, and now those who had made mistakes were owning up to them. This was the beginning of healing, not just for the restaurant, but for her team as well. But then there was Monica, the woman who had started all of this, the one who had been the driving force behind the sabotage, stood at the back of the room with her arms crossed, her defiance evident in the way she held herself. "I'm not doing this," Monica spat, her eyes flashing with anger. "You can't just turn this place into some sort of moral crusade. This was about power, and you took it from me." Her words cut through the room, and everyone fell silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Lily met Monica's gaze, her calm exterior masking the fury that simmered beneath the surface. "This isn't about power, Monica. This is about doing what's right. You've let your personal vendettas cloud your judgment, and you've hurt the team. But I'm not going to fight with you. If you don't want to be part of this, you don't have to be." Monica's face twisted in contempt. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the restaurant, slamming the door behind her with such force that the windows rattled. The remaining staff exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of Monica's departure, but Lily stood firm, her resolve unshaken. She had made her choice, and the restaurant was better off without the toxicity she had brought. As the door slammed shut, Lily turned to the team. "We're moving forward from this. No more sabotages, no more petty games. It's time to rebuild. Let's work together and make the Dynaco the place it should have always been." There was a moment of silence before the employees nodded, some with hesitant smiles, others with looks of determination. They had all been through something difficult, but now they had a chance to make it right, and Lily was ready to lead them into a brighter future. With Monica gone and the truth out in the open, Lily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The restaurant was hers to lead, and she wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of her vision. The staff had made mistakes, but they were taking responsibility, and that was what mattered most. The Dynaco was going to be a place of fairness, respect, and second chances, and Lily was going to make sure of it. The atmosphere in the Dynaco shifted the moment George walked through the door. His presence was unmistakable, his air of authority still lingering despite the fact that he had no control over the restaurant anymore. It was clear that he hadn't given up, not by a long shot. George's gaze swept over the staff, and a smug smile crossed his face, as if he expected them to cower in his presence. But when his eyes landed on Lily, his expression hardened. He had been a thorn in her side for so long, and now it seemed like he was here to remind her of his old power. "Well, well," George said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "The little waitress is now the big boss. How's that working out for you?" Lily stood tall behind the counter, unfazed by his presence. She had been through much worse than this. This was just another obstacle, another test. "It's working just fine, George," she replied calmly, her tone unwavering. "I'm in charge now, and I plan to keep it that way," George scoffed, leaning against the counter, as if he was in control. But his eyes flickered with uncertainty. "You think you can run this place better than me? You think the staff is going to listen to you? They'll see through your good intentions eventually, just like they saw through everyone else's." His words were an attempt to undermine her, but Lily wasn't having it. She knew what she had built here, and she wasn't about to let anyone tear it down. "I'm not here to win a popularity contest," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I'm here to make this restaurant a place of respect, fairness, and success. The team is with me, and we're moving forward, no matter what you say." George's smile faltered for a moment, but then he straightened, his arrogance creeping back. "We'll see how long that lasts. You'll need more than just good intentions to keep this place running." Lily held her ground. "The only thing that will keep this place running is respect, hard work, and teamwork. And that's what I'm giving them." Before George could respond, the door opened again, and in walked David. His entrance was a silent declaration of power. His presence was felt even before he spoke. The room seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time George's confidence wavered. David walked past the staff, his eyes never leaving George. "I've been watching," David said, his voice calm but cutting. "And I've seen enough." George turned to face him, clearly surprised to see David. "What is this, David? Are you really backing her up?" David didn't flinch at George's condescension. "I'm not backing anyone up, George. I'm simply taking control of my business. You're a liability now." George's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do this," he spat. "I've been here for years. I built this place." David didn't raise his voice, but there was a quiet authority in his words. "You may have been here for years, but your time is up. I've been watching how you've treated my staff, how you've manipulated the system, and I won't tolerate it anymore." There was a long pause, the tension thick in the air. Lily watched, her chest tightening as she realized what was about to happen. George's face turned red with fury, his fists clenching at his sides. "You're firing me?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. David didn't hesitate. "Yes, George, I am." Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her as she watched George's face contort with shock and rage. It was happening. He was finally being removed from the picture. George opened his mouth to protest, but David cut him off. "I'm done listening to your excuses. You've been nothing but a toxic influence here, and it ends now." With that, David turned to the staff, his gaze sweeping over them as if to reassure them that they were all part of the future of the restaurant. "I'm sorry it took this long," he said, his voice steady and full of resolve. "But from now on, we move forward together. Lily is in charge, and I'm here to make sure she has everything she needs to succeed." George stood frozen. His jaw clenched as he realized there was no way out. The defeat was evident in his eyes, and without another word he turned and stormed out of the restaurant, his footsteps echoing in the silence that followed. Lily let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. It was over. The battle for control had been won. As the door slammed shut behind George, the tension in the restaurant began to dissipate. David gave Lily a nod of approval. "You did well," he said. "You've earned this." Lily couldn't help but smile, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. It had been a long road, but she had finally done it. She had fought for her place, and she had come out on top. With George gone and David's support, she was ready to take the Diner Co. to new heights. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, Lily felt like the future was hers to shape. The morning was filled with a palpable sense of change as Monica walked into the diner that day, unaware that her time was about to come to an abrupt end. She walked in with her usual attitude, confident in her defiance of the new management, unaware that David was already waiting for her in the back office. The tension in the air seemed almost thick enough to cut as the staff quietly went about their tasks, stealing occasional glances toward the office. Lily was busy overseeing the restaurant floor, ensuring everything was running smoothly, but her mind couldn't help but linger on the events of the past few days. She had made it through the toughest part, but there was still work to do, and Monica's defiance had no place in her new vision for the restaurant. As Monica entered the office, she was greeted by David, who was seated behind the desk with an air of finality. He didn't need to say much. His presence was enough to communicate the seriousness of the situation. Monica, however, was still brimming with her usual arrogance, her lips curling into a smug smile. "What's this about, David?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm sure you didn't call me in here to compliment my excellent work." David's gaze didn't waver, his calm demeanor belying the storm of frustration that had been brewing for weeks. "Monica, we've had enough of your behavior," he said quietly but firmly. "The sabotage, the slowdowns, the disruption you've caused, it's all unacceptable, and it ends today." Monica's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly regained her composure. "You can't be serious," she said with a chuckle, her voice laced with disbelief. "I've been here longer than anyone else, and you're going to throw me out like this?" David's expression hardened. "You've been part of the problem for far too long, and it's time for you to go. You're fired, Monica." The words hit her like a slap in the face. Monica's eyes widened in shock, her hand gripping the edge of the doorframe for support. "You can't do this," she hissed, her voice rising in anger. "I've worked too hard to be treated like this." David remained calm. "You had every opportunity to make things right, but instead, you chose to sabotage the team, to make this place a toxic environment. You've been given enough chances." Monica's face reddened, and a surge of fury boiled up inside her. She took a step forward, her fists clenched. "You think you're better than me? You think Lily can do a better job than me?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "She's nothing!" Lily, who had been listening just outside the door, felt a rush of anger flare up in her chest, but she kept her cool, knowing that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Monica had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. David's voice was calm, almost disinterested as he addressed Monica. "Lily is the future of this place. She's the reason we're moving forward, and you're holding us back." Monica didn't respond. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the office, her face twisted in rage. As she passed through the dining area, she glared at Lily, her eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," she spat under her breath, but Lily didn't flinch. "Good riddance," she muttered, watching Monica disappear through the front door, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence that followed. With Monica gone, Lily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The last of the toxic employees was out of the picture. The air in the restaurant seemed lighter, and the employees who had been quietly watching the drama unfold seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. For the first time, Lily felt like she truly had control. The restaurant was hers now, and the changes she had set in motion were becoming a reality. The team, though hesitant at first, was starting to warm to the idea of fairness and respect in the workplace. There was still work to be done, but the path ahead was clear. With Monica's departure, the final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, and Lily could finally move forward, focused entirely on making the Diner Co. a place where every employee could thrive, where customers were treated with kindness, and where the past would never hold them back again. The morning light poured through the windows of the Diner Co., casting a warm glow over the recently transformed space. The familiar hum of the restaurant, once filled with tension and frustration, now buzzed with energy and purpose. The staff moved with a newfound confidence, their actions synchronized as they took pride in their work. Lily stood near the front, watching her team in motion, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. The toxic atmosphere that had once plagued the restaurant had disappeared, replaced by an environment of respect and collaboration. Every day, the atmosphere grew more positive, and the customers could feel the difference. They now walked in with smiles, greeted warmly by the staff, and treated with the same level of kindness and professionalism. It wasn't just the food that had improved. It was the entire experience. The customers felt valued, not as just another number, but as people who deserved the best service, the best attention, and the best care. This was the restaurant that Lily had always wanted to create. The morning rush, once chaotic and disorganized, was now a well-oiled machine. Employees worked together seamlessly, no longer distracted by petty rivalries or defiant attitudes. The kitchen operated with precision, orders flowing smoothly from the counter to the plates with minimal delay. It wasn't just about efficiency, it was about quality. Quality in the food, in the service, and in the relationships between the staff. Lily had cultivated a team that understood the importance of each customer, each order, each moment. The transformation had been nothing short of miraculous. As Lily walked around the restaurant, she saw familiar faces among the staff. They no longer looked defeated or disinterested. They looked engaged, passionate, and proud of what they had built together. Monica's absence had been a turning point, but it was the entire team's willingness to change that had made the biggest impact. They respected Lily, not because of her title, but because she had earned it. She had shown them that leadership wasn't about control. It was about listening, supporting, and bringing out the best in each person. As the lunch crowd thinned out, David entered the restaurant. His presence still carried weight, but this time, there was no tension. He walked over to Lily, who was standing by the counter, overseeing the final touches on the day's orders. She smiled when she saw him, knowing that whatever he had to say next would be another step in her journey. "How's everything going?" David asked, his tone warm but measured. Lily nodded, her eyes scanning the restaurant. "It's going great. The staff is working together better than ever, and the customers are happy. I think we've finally turned the corner." David smiled, clearly impressed. "You've done an amazing job, Lily. This place has completely transformed, and it's all thanks to your leadership." Lily felt a surge of pride at his words. It wasn't about the praise. It was about the fact that she had made a real difference. The restaurant was no longer a toxic environment. It was a place where people wanted to work, where customers wanted to return, and where Lily had proven to herself that she could lead. David's smile widened as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he said, handing her the envelope. "You've earned this, and I want to offer you the opportunity to take it to the next level." Lily took the envelope from him, her curiosity piqued. She opened it carefully, revealing a letter and a set of business cards. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the words on the letter. "We would like to offer you the position of overseeing multiple locations of the Dynaco." Lily stared at the words in disbelief, the magnitude of the offer slowly sinking in. "David, I don't know what to say," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never expected anything like this." David's expression was serious yet filled with confidence. "You've proven that you can handle this place, Lily. And now I want you to bring that same leadership to other locations. You're ready for this." Lily felt a rush of emotions. Surprise, excitement, and a sense of validation. This was the opportunity she had been working for, the chance to take everything she had learned and apply it on a larger scale. She had come so far, from a waitress struggling to survive in a toxic environment to a leader who was now being entrusted with more responsibility. "I don't know if I'm ready," Lily admitted, looking down at the letter in her hands. "But I want to be. I want to continue making a difference." David placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. "You already have, and you will continue to do so. You're a leader now, Lily. Don't doubt yourself." Lily took a deep breath, the weight of the decision still heavy in her chest. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had transformed the Dynaco into a place where people were respected, where the work culture was positive, and where customers could enjoy a meal in peace. But this next step would take her even further. It was a chance to spread the changes she had made to other locations, to create an environment where fairness, kindness, and respect were the standard. With the promotion, Lily would have the power to impact more than just one restaurant. She could change an entire chain. As she looked up at David, her resolve solidified. "I'll do it," she said, her voice full of determination. "I'll take the job." David nodded, a satisfied smile on his face. "I knew you would." The moment marked the beginning of a new chapter for Lily, one where her leadership, vision, and passion for change would continue to shape the future of the Diner Co. If you're inspired by Lily's journey and the power of transformation, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts with us. Have you ever faced a challenge that forced you to rise above and lead? We'd love to hear your story. Join us for more inspiring content and stay tuned for the next chapter in Lily's story as she takes on even bigger challenges. Your support means the world to us, so hit that bell icon to never miss an update.